Hi guys, welcome back to our new session. In today's lecture, we will learn about object in class, and more specifically, we will learn about object-oriented programming. So I'm just going to open up this theory. It's going to be a short lecture. So anyway, that's all about object-oriented programming. So let's just read it. Um, the coding approach in which we compare our code or block of codes with real-life objects. That's known as object-oriented programming language or object-oriented programming. You see, the coding approach in which we compare our code or portion of codes with real-life objects is known as object-oriented programming. What are objects? If I ask you, objects, everything that you see around yourself. That can be your mobile phone, your computer, everything that you see around yourself. That could be a human as well. We'll call it an object, right? So these are known as objects in real life. When we compare these real life objects, when we refer to those real life objects that you see around yourself, and we code while keeping an eye on them or just comparing with them, that's known as object-oriented programming. I'm sure this is clear. And if you still have any questions, you can definitely ask your questions. Just go to the comment section and drop your questions, right? I'll answer you. Now, you should keep in mind that when we say the term object-oriented programming, that means we will work with class and objects, right? We have two entities inside object-oriented programming. The first one is known as object, the first one is known as class, and the second one is known as object. So let's see, what is a class? A class defines how an object will behave, what will be its features. A class defines how an object will behave, what will be its features. See, if I say I have a mobile phone, right? It will have some features. It will be used for communications. It will have the slot for your SIM card. It will have a camera. It will have I would say microphone. It will have speakers. It will have more other features that you could find in almost every phone. So right, a class, here we have a class which is phone, and it has some features that would be that could be found in almost every phone. So this is known as a blueprint. A class actually refers or represents a blueprint for an object, right? We'll go for the object, don't worry. I'm sure this is going to be confusing for you guys because it's the beginning. Don't worry. I'm just going to clarify everything, right? So now a class has a member functions and data members or member variables. We have two entities inside a class. First one is known as member function, and the second one is known as data member or member variable. These both it has two names, data members or member variables, right? Now let's talk about what is a member function. A member function is any function defined inside a class which can be applied on the created objects, right? That's, you can call it a simple function, the one we have talked about in previous lectures. A member function is a normal function, you can say, which is defined inside a body of a class. That's why we call it member function. And that can be used to apply that can be applied on the created objects, right? That's known as member function. It's a simple function, and when it's defined inside a class, then it's called a member function, and it can be used on the created objects. Now let's talk about the second one, which is a data member. So a data member or member variables are simply variables defined inside a class. They help in improving the class functionality. A data member or member variable is, you can call it a simple variable or a variable that we are defining in our ordinary programs, right? So it's a simple variable, a normal variable, but once it's defined or declared or initialized inside a class, then that's being called a data member or member variable. What is its purpose? They help in improving the class functionality. They help in improving the class functionality. If you want to use data members, then that would make a trouble for you in working with a class or working when working in object-oriented programming, right? So that was all about class. I'm sure this is clear, right? A class a class defines how an object will behave, what will be its features. Then it has two entities, member functions and data members. Member function refers to a normal function which can be applied on created objects, and a data member are simple variables that helps in building up the class. You can just say that way. Now let's talk about object. What is an object? An object is a thing, right? As I said earlier at the beginning of the class, that object is everything that you see around yourself. There, those all are known as objects, right? But in programming world, you guys can check it out. In the programming world, it is a data structure, a variable, a function, a string object, everything that you use or work with while programming is known as an object. A string object, an array is also an object. Functions are also known as objects, but they're having different types, right? So they're known as objects. Now let's see this point. We initialize objects for each class in order to have access to member functions. You must initialize objects for that class, the one that you just declared above in your program, in order to work or apply those functions, the member functions that you have defined inside that class. If you want initialize objects, if you want declare objects, then those member functions would all be in vain. So that's why it's important, that's crucial to initialize objects, right? So what is the syntax for class and initializing objects and so on? First of all, simply you have to use class keyword, which is a reserved keyword, and then the class name. The class name is recommended to be in capitalized case. You know what is a capitalized case? The one, the case which each word first alphabet is going to be capital, and the rest of the word is going to be in lower letters. That's known as capitalized form or capitalized case of name or a sentence, whatever, but we're talking about name here. So that's a recommended point here. But you can go with lowercase or uppercase, that won't make any problem. Now, you then simply have to put the curly braces as usual, and then it ends. Keep in mind that a class body ends with a semicolon. That's important point. Now, that was the outer structure of a class. Now, let's talk about the inner syntax of a class. First of all, see that access identifier, which ends not with a semicolon, but that's a simple colon. What is an access identifier? That could be private or public. Well, it actually defines that the data members or the member functions that you have defined below these access identifier, this access identifier, will they be accessible from every part of the program? If yes, then you should use public identifier, access identifier. If private, then those functions might not be used or accessed outside or any part of the program. So recommended one is public identifier here. Then this is, you can data members, which means simply variables, then member functions. So what would be the syntax for member functions? We'll just work with that. We'll see that in our example program, right? And in order to initialize objects, as I said earlier, simply type that class name and then object name and simply terminate the statement. That's it. So now I have a real example for you guys here. Be attentive. It's very important. If you guys can understand this real life example, that means you literally have got everything about object oriented programming. I would suggest that just just know this example, and you would even teach others about object oriented programming, right? So let's get started. Assume that phone, simply phone, is a class. A phone will have several features which will almost be found in every phone, but the difference will lie only in their specs, such as a phone in general will have a camera. Now this means phone for any brand, for instance Apple, will have camera, but it will have its own specs for camera. Right now, see, phone is a class here. Phone is a class. This is a class, and it works as a blueprint for all types of phones. The object here is the phone of any specific brand, right? I'm sure this is very simple example, right? This is easy. A phone, simply phone in general, is a class. Now it's a blueprint, right? It will have feature. A phone will have a camera, it will have speakers, it will have microphone, it will have an operating system. Yeah, it will have a battery. So you can find all those features in almost every phone. That every phone or phone of every brand or phone of any brand is known as an object here. You will find those features in that phone, which is an object. That specific phone, the phone of any brand, suppose Apple, Samsung, if you pick up any phone, you will find those features there. That would be camera, it will be having camera, it will be having speakers, microphone, and so on. But those will be kind of different. Like my phone will be having different camera than yours. It will have different quality. It will come in different quality. But it has camera. I can assure you that it has camera. So the one which is being assured here is known as the quality of that object, or the behavior of that object, which I have defined inside the class, which is known as phone. I'm sure this example is clear. You guys can read it yourself. It's very simple example. Check it out. So that's it. Now let's go back to the original coding portion here. I'm just going to work with classes here. James, I'm just going to show you this example. Program example, simply, as I said earlier, use class keyword and then the class name, which is room here, right, in lowercase, no matter, and then simply put the curly braces or make the body for the class, which ends with semicolon. And then this one right up here is the identifier, which is public, means these member functions and data variables are accessible from any portion of the program, any part of the program. So I simply have declared two data members, which is holding integer data type, integer values, length and width. And then this one right up here is known as one member function, which having name area. It's not taking any arguments, and its return type is integer. I simply multiply the length with width, and it's being stored in area variable, and then I return that area, which is going to be an integer value. So that's the return type here is integer. See, I simply initialize objects for them. This is the class name, and R1 here is the object name. And then I assign values to length and width, which is the data member or member variables. So this is the syntax. You should use dot operator here or dot symbol. So R1, which is the object, R1 dot length equals to 10 and R1 dot width equals to 6. And then I have simply passed those values I've simply passed the value for length and width. Now I have to find the area. So simply use cout because I want that to be shown to the user on display. So R1, which is the object name, dot again here area, and then empty parenthesis because it's not taking any arguments. So guess what? What will happen? It will give me the area of length and width that I have passed. Right? Let me just run this. You guys can check it out. You guys can see the result, which is 60, means length multiplied by width. And no problem, you can get these values from the user at runtime. Just make use of same, and that would make sense. So this is how we work with class and objects. You can define more member functions here, and then you can work with these functions. You can even define more member data members if needed. So as I told you guys at the lecture, that data member helps us in building the class. If I won't use these data members, then how I would even create this area function, how I would use these variables. Because of these data members, I can create a member function. So both are important. In every class, you will find data members. I'm not saying that there would be 2 or 1. There could be any data member, number of data members. And also you will find the member functions, mean a simple functions defined inside that class. So that you would find inside a class. That's how we work with objects in class, right? So now see, every rectangle will have area. I can say that every rectangle will have its area. But the object that I create is, suppose this is the rectangle, or this is, I have suppose I have given the length and width of my phone. My phone is also a rectangle, my room, my door. So now every rectangle, every object that I see around myself, which is in a rectangle shape, it will have the area, but the area will be different. The specification will be different. Try to relate it with that real example that I have given to you guys. So that was all about class and objects. I'm sure you guys enjoyed the lecture, and that was our second last lecture. By tomorrow night, I will see you guys in the last lecture. So thank you very much for taking your time to watching this lecture, and I will see you guys next time.